A Comprehensive Guide to Anti-Grappling. Part 2. Targeting. You often see when a fighter goes against a very well-established wrestler, they'll become passive. They won't want to throw, they won't want to commit on strikes because they're afraid of having someone duck under their shots or catch a kick, something like that, and you'll see they'll become very, very passive. But how would you win like that, right? This is where targeting becomes really, really important when fighting a wrestler. There are a multitude of different fighters where they very select variety of strikes that tailor towards fighting a grappler. And today we're going to be covering a few different fighters and how they use targeting to help prevent shots while also landing their own strikes. So we're going to be looking at Dela Matalena, Israel Adesanya, and Leon Edwards. So let's start with Jack. Dela Matalena has a really, really good base for targeting in terms of anti-grappling. He's a very good boxer, and that allows him to use a variety of different punches. Now, the first thing that Jack does really, really well is changing levels. Jack's body work on its own, just from a pure boxing standpoint, is incredible. For MMA, it does a lot of different things. The reason working the body is so good when defending takedowns is to hit the body, you've got to change your level. If you match your opponent's level, right, when they're trying to take you down, they can't get under you and they can't get to your hips. So sticking a jab to the body or ripping a nice liver shot is always going to, make your opponent have to reset before shooting. It's why recently against Patchy Mix, Mario Batista was drilling those right straight to the body because it prevents Mix from getting in and under on the hips. Jack's body jab against Bilal Muhammad was very, very beneficial as it's the longest weapon as well, and obviously you're changing levels, so that just magnifies the defensive capabilities. Then there's also just the jab. The jab overall is a good thing if you're measured with it, right? If you're not throwing it out lazy and you're poking with it properly, it'll be very, very good because of the distance you keep. And if you just throw it as a standalone strike, there's less likelihood that your opponent can go and shoot under. Not necessarily to do with targeting, but also pulling out after exchanges and moving your feet constantly is also very beneficial. Sticking and moving is probably one of the best things you can do. Then there's also the uppercut, right? I'm not a big believer in timing the knee on the takedown. Knees against wrestlers are good because they often have to pressure forward, but to time it on the shot is actually not that good of an idea. Now, this is because you're on one leg when you're throwing a knee, right? If the person doesn't get knocked out, which let's weigh the odds, right? I know MMA is a bit of a gambling sport, but it's not very likely that you're going to knock them out. If someone's moving forward, it's likely that that knee's going to be smothered and you're going to end up on one leg. The uppercut, instead, is quite a bit safer, and while you may give up your hips, that uppercut acts as a natural underhook. Same with body hooks as well, that Jack works very well. That uppercut can very easily help work its way in to other methods of takedown defense and is overall quite a lot safer. However, that knee, as your opponent's coming in, if they're trying to press you against the fence, just timing them coming forward rather than shooting can be significantly more effective. And again, to see this, in action, Dela Matalena versus Bilal Muhammad, cannot recommend that fight enough. It's a bit hard to find the full fight on the internet, I've found, but if you can, please give it a watch. It's a perfect example of everything that I've been talking about. Leon Edwards. Leon had three very, very impressive back-to-back-to-back anti-grappling performances. And while he has shown some weakness as of late due to his susceptibility to pressure, the benefits of his game, right, when defending takedowns against Usman and Covington have to be highlighted. One of the most unique things about Leon Edwards is he's very, very controlled and measured, and he's, in general, quite an inactive fighter. He doesn't throw a lot of strikes, and he likes to snipe, pick, and prod. He's very, very calculated and measured with what he throws. So Leon will often commit with just a 1-2, just a right hook, and just leg kicks. And the less strikes you throw, the less opportunities your opponent has to time that and shoot under for a takedown. Now, this can obviously also lead to the issue of not causing enough damage, but Leon is very, very far on one end of the spectrum when it comes to causing damage. Leon is also just very technically savvy, so he can prevent his opponents from landing strikes with his superior footwork. But if you can cause a bit more damage with more measured strikes, that will work very well in your favor. Now, Leon will very often commit to the leg kick, right? Leg kicks are a bit half-half in terms of risk. The thigh kick can be a bit risky because you have to kick with, in general, you have to kick with the shin, not the foot. And that gives opponents an opportunity to possibly catch that and move in as you are on one leg. The calf kick is quite a lot better in this scenario, which Leon has used before, and almost like a kick to the knee is very beneficial, as you don't entirely have to kick with your shin. You can do it from a bit longer range, you can do it a bit lower effort, and because Leon's a very, very long fighter, he's 6'2" for welterweight, he's got very long legs, he can drill those kicks from a long range and still remain safe, right? It's less likely for the opponent to catch them as that kick lands quite a lot lower, right? Leon will mix this up with calf kicks, kicks to the knee, oblique kicks as well. It's beneficial in the same way it is to the jab, except it's a lot better at stopping direct pressure forward. As in, it is quite literally the longest possible part of your body, as opposed to the jab, where it's the longest, part of the upper body. That oblique kick can be used very well, and it all comes together when Leon starts using his footwork to help nullify his opponent's offense. But staying measured and staying controlled with what you throw is really, really important when it comes to defending takedowns, and I feel like Leon represents this the best. So if you want a good example of how he uses this to the best of his abilities, I'd say him versus Kamaru Usman 3 is probably a good example. Colby Covington kind of took a while to get into his game in that fight, and against Usman in the second fight, Usman had a lot more success pressuring, as it seemed like Leon was sort of breaking a bit. So the third fight against Usman, I definitely recommend watching. That should be widely available on YouTube, but please go give it a watch in full to see it, in complete display. Israel Adesanya. Now, Adesanya uses a lot of the same skills that Leon Edwards does, as they are both very long, dynamic. Israel Adesanya is quite a bit more dynamic, but they use a lot of the similar concepts and ideas, as they are both very skilled counterpunchers, very measured, very controlled. Now, against Marvin Vettori, I feel like this is the best example of defensive wrestling from Adesanya, even though it is Vettori. Adesanya mainly used calf kicks and jabs and right hooks, lead uppercuts. Now, you really saw Adesanya committing to the calf kick. He does this in most of his fights, and Adesanya opted to switch to southpaw for the majority of this fight. Now, this is because he wants to target Marvin's leg, but to throw a outside leg kick is a little bit more risky. It sort of squares you, and doesn't square you up, but it lines you up better for the shot, and it's a bit easier to blitz in off of that and get a takedown, and also it just causes less damage. So Adesanya switched to southpaw, started opting for that outside calf kick, and often people that want to take you down, especially if you're a more elusive fighter in terms of footwork, are very ploddy. They start coming forward, they put a lot of weight on that front leg, so if you can time that calf kick as they're moving forward, it can work exceptionally well, just dead to rights almost every single time. It's why it worked against Paulo Costa so well, not necessarily because Costa was a wrestler, but because Costa constantly wanted that forward pressure. Now, you saw when Adesanya went for that thigh kick, on the outside leg, Vettori immediately went in and shot in and got a takedown, right? So that just shows the difference between the benefits of the calf kick when defending wrestling and the downsides of the kick to the thigh. Adesanya also used the lead uppercut a lot. Now, I talked about the rear uppercut in terms of takedown defense when it comes to establishing an underhook and just being better and safer at, being a defensive response to takedowns. Now, Adesanya used the right uppercut, the lead uppercut, sort of for the same reason, right? It still has the same benefits. You can time it a lot better. It's a lot safer. It acts as a natural underhook. But Adesanya was using that mainly because he wanted to take off an angle and move. Vettori is a very simple fighter when it comes to footwork. He will just move forward. And he will square up if he has you against the fence, right? So Adesanya just needs to constantly circle and move and just stay on his bike. It's nothing too difficult, but throwing that lead uppercut naturally allows you to pivot out. It's almost like throwing a left hook or a right hook and taking a step out with your back leg behind you, right? And you're changing the angle. So that becomes a lot easier if you're throwing a strike off your lead side. So that lead uppercut also has the benefit of acting as a method of footwork, right? It makes it quite a lot easier for Adesanya. Adesanya uses this approach when someone's trying to wrestle him as him throwing hooks, right? Baiting people in exchanges doesn't work so well because the way Adesanya throws hooks, he leaves his hips exposed, right? Because he leans back. So that becomes a bit risky, right? You see against Jan Blachowicz was able to get into exchanges with Adesanya. Adesanya would throw that left hook. Blachowicz will go for the body lock and trip him out. But against Vettori and other fighters, he, opt to not go for the hook, stick to lead uppercuts or just uppercuts in general. Instead, he had a lot more success. So check out his fight against Marvin Vettori, even Derek Brunson a little bit. He was a lot better at timing knees, getting his hips away, that sort of thing. But yeah, Marvin Vettori is probably the best example of this. Even his fight against Robert Whittaker in the rematch, he was very good at using calf kicks and staying measured. Even though Whittaker was able to take him down on a few occasions, it's still a good example of this. So just go and check those fights out. They're pretty easily available on YouTube. So yeah. So anyway, guys, that was the breakdown. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a few things. I'll leave links to the fights that I was talking about in the description or comments below so you guys can go check that out. And anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you later.